All right, meteorological fall begins tomorrow, and we could see some record-setting cold temperatures out east, while at the same time potentially seeing record-setting heat out west. The NHC, or National Hurricane Center, has given our disturbance out in the tropical Atlantic a 40% chance for cyclone formation over the next 7 days. And we've seen a lot of rainfall across the plains recently, although as we move through the next 4 or 5 days, we will start to see a little bit more rainfall, potentially excessive rainfall with the threat of flash flooding up through portions of the Mid-Atlantic, New England, and Midwest. It's August 31st, 2025. Let's talk about what you could expect over the next 7 days across the states. And by the way, if you like this type of content, simply hitting the like button or following or subscribing is a big help to the channel. That being said, let's get started. So as I said in the beginning of the video, we're about to enter meteorological fall. That is September, October, and November. And we're going to have this large temperature swing from the West Coast out east. Why? It's actually pretty simple. We have a large amplified trough, as you can see right here, digging down into the northern plains, upper Midwest. What this does basically is set up a ridge out west and some troughing out east. Where you have this troughing, you're going to have a lot of cold air injection from the north. And of course, as we get into fall and winter, that air coming from the north gets colder and colder. Out west here, where we have that ridge setting up, you have that air from the south pushing up. You're going to get warmer air. You're likely going to get drier conditions out west. This isn't just your typical trough and ridge setting up. This trough, as I said, is very amplified, meaning we're going to get a lot cooler air than we would normally expect this time of year. And then out west, it's likely going to be a lot warmer than we would expect this time of year. Now you can see as this moves out around the 7th or 8th, we start to get more of a zonal flow across the states. You can see our jet stream just holding from the west to the east up here. But, and this is where models don't agree right now, as we get into the 9th, 10th, and 11th. Do we get another trough trying to dig down out east, as we're seeing here on our latest Euro, which would potentially bring a lot more cold air again into portions of the Midwest, Ohio Valley, potentially southeast, mid-Atlantic, New England. And this may also set up some severe weather up and down the East Coast. What you're also seeing right here is a very strong hurricane. That's too far out, so don't pay too much attention to that. But this troughing and ridging, models can do pretty good seeing it a little farther out because it's a large event, unlike a tropical system, which is much more localized compared to large troughs or ridges setting up. Of course, the American model agrees in the short term here. Our temperatures are going to be well below average over the next week or so across the plains and out east. And with this, we also might be watching a severe weather setup as well out east. We're going to have to watch for that. I wouldn't be surprised to see a slight risk or potentially even an enhanced risk as we get into the 4th or 5th of September. Again, as I said, here's where the models start to not completely agree. Getting into the 9th, 10th, and 11th, the American model doesn't exactly have a large trough digging back down into the Midwest and out east. It actually has a ridge setting up, meaning the European model and American model think basically two opposite things are going to occur as we push into the middle towards the end of the second week of September. Notice our temperature anomalies as we get into the second week of September here on the GFS. You can see we have a lot warmer weather out east here. But again, our European thinks we could get some more sinking cold air. And if this is cold enough getting into the middle of September, it's not impossible to get some flurries up here in the northern tier states. I'm talking UP, northern Michigan, northern Wisconsin, northern Minnesota. I did want to point out that our European global model is typically our best global model when it comes to forecasting temperatures, especially when they're a little bit farther out. This is also a telltale sign that we could actually see those cooler temperatures continuing through portions of the plains and out east as we get into the middle of September, maybe even into the 3rd week of September. This is our Pacific North American oscillation teleconnection. This is our European weekly. So for the most part, this PNA stays positive. Now, a positive PNA, you're typically going to have more ridging out west, more troughing out east. Simply drier and hotter out west and a little bit cooler and more potential for storms out east, especially if you have a neutral to a negative NAL. So how cool are we talking? Well, this is our apparent temperatures. This is from our latest Euro run, well, our 12Z run. So it's going to be a little bit better data than our 18Z run. And you can see up here, we have some feels like temperatures pushing into the low 50s and 40s. This is as we get into next Thursday, but it's going to get colder than that. As we move into Friday, you can see we're getting into the 30s in the northern plains and upper Midwest. And then a lot of that really cold air begins to sink even farther down to the south, even reaching potentially down into the southern plains. You can see that apparent temperature starts getting into the 50s, down towards Oklahoma, Arkansas, pushing into Kentucky as well. And as we move even farther forward, I'll actually push out to the east so you can see this. Here we go again. We've got those feels like lows getting down into the low 60s and 50s. As far south as southern Tennessee, they may try and creep into the deep south. As you can see here, we have those apparent temperatures in the 50s, reaching down into states like Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi. And this right here is our actual temperature. This is cold. These are temperatures you're typically not going to see until the end of fall. Yet we could see this in early September, and we likely will see this. The models are pretty confident in this at this point. But again, watch what happens as we get into the 13th and the 14th. This is near the end of the run. We're getting into La La Land. But again, the European model, typically our better model with temperature forecasting, wants to continue to pump that cold northern air down into the east. And a lot of this cool air will try to approach the coast, as you can see here. It'll feel pretty good, actually pretty chilly in cities like Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., New York City, if this air does push this far out to the east. So what's it going to be like out west while this is happening? Well, it is going to be hot. You can see here from Washington stretching all the way down into the southwest. We could see temperatures in the mid to upper 90s, even in the hundreds in some areas, as we're entering that meteorological fall where we're supposed to be cooling a little bit. But this is going to be a strong ridge, and this ridge is going to last for a little bit out here. Now, the northern Rockies likely will feel some of this cold air, at least according to the Euro. The GFS and Canadian see this happening as well. But you can see when we're looking at temperature anomalies out west, and especially in the Northwest and Pacific Northwest, wow, these are above average temperatures. We're seeing 25 to possibly even 30 degrees above average for this time of year in portions of Washington up here. And look at that stark difference here, 20 degrees above average and almost 20 degrees below average. I do believe as we get into the 3rd, 4th week of September, we'll see some cold air entering the west, and we'll probably see a little bit of a warm up out east. It's a little too far to confirm that, but if you're concerned that this is just going to be an extremely hot fall out west, these conditions will likely flip a few times before we get into winter. Over the next 48 to 72 hours, we're likely going to see a lot of precipitation continuing to fall across the plains, but watch as this large upper level low and amplified trough, as we've been talking about, that's bringing in all this cold air, begins to move into the east. You're going to see a lot of moisture beginning to fall in areas of the Midwest and up towards the Northeast. And it's very obvious to see when this low begins to move in, because there you go. If the European is right, we're going to see a big transfer of moisture up here into the Northeast. And if the Euro is right, Florida as well, buckle up, because you're going to see a lot of rainfall. Now the GFS sees something similar happening here as well. You can see as we get into the 4th, 5th, 6th, the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, New England, we're starting to see a lot of rainfall out there, and I do believe some of this will be severe. Remember, there is a fall tornado season, there's a fall severe season, and when you have these extremely cold temperatures pushing in against some of that warm air that's still sticking around, you can get some outbreaks. Overall though, if we push this all the way to the end of the run on the American, and this is La La Land, but I want to show you it anyways, you can see there is also a stark difference precipitation wise and temperature wise. So what's going on in the tropics? Well, the National Hurricane Center, as I said earlier, has labeled this zone out here in the tropical Atlantic for potential cyclone formation over the next 7 days. They have it at about a 40% chance right now. Now, I do think this chance will go up. I do think we probably will see a cyclone out of this. The water temperatures are fine. It's not going to be battling too much dry air, and there's not a ton of shear out ahead of this. So I do think the odds are pretty good. Although I do agree with a lot of the modeling right now, though, that it might head up to the north. Taking a look at our latest American model run, you can see it forming down there, and this is as we're getting into September 5th, September 6th. We might see tropical cyclogenesis, or TCG, within the next 72 hours. It definitely is possible, and you can see this storm moving up into the north and west. Here is what we are looking at right here. The GFS also has a little bit of activity out here in the Gulf and Caribbean, which it's a little bit farther out on the run, so I'm not going to talk about it too much right now, but the American model does have the tropics heating up again, which wouldn't be a surprise because remember, we're about 10 days away from the peak of hurricane season. But here we go. The storm starts moving up to the north, and notice it intensifies really quickly. The quicker it intensifies, the higher up into the atmosphere the storm will reach, and thus it will be affected more by this high out here in the Atlantic. Our Bermuda high will likely grab onto it and sling it up to the north. That would be best possible case scenario. If this storm stays weaker, if this high pressure possibly pushes a little bit farther down to the west, we may get the storm lingering off a little bit more to the west and potentially steering up somewhere near the coast. Again, this is a bunch of ifs. We don't even know if we're going to have this storm form into a cyclone, although like I said, I think the odds are pretty good. But most models I'm looking at right now see the same thing. We can go and we can actually take a look at the Euro as well, and the Euro's seeing a similar outcome. Here we go, heads off to the west. Now on the Euro, this storm takes a lot longer to get its act together. It's not a Cat 1 or even Cat 2 until it's out here approaching kind of the Eastern Caribbean or Western Atlantic. And notice, because it's weaker longer, it does go farther west, as I said, because it's not going to be stretching as far up into the atmosphere. It's not going to be as influenced by this high up to the northeast. So the Euro has it pushing up farther to the west, but then eventually going north and not bothering us as well. Good signs here. Now, this is also extremely important. We need to look at water temps. Our equatorial Pacific is cooling. Our ENSO 3 and 4 is cooling. And as this cools and as we eventually get into that weak La Nina that we're expected to enter, our jet stream is going to begin to push off to the north. It's not going to have all that convection in the south to hold on to, and that's going to clear up a lot of air in the Gulf, Caribbean, and Western Atlantic. It typically reduces the amount of wind shear we have out there. So approaching peak hurricane season, potentially as we get into late September, early October, we get a little bit less shear through this region. Water temperatures are still warm if we don't have a lot of tropical activity out here over the next couple of weeks, because that would lead to less upwelling. I think we need to pay attention. Really, to me, end of September, early October. The way things are looking, the way things are lining up, I think it's kind of going to be like last year, where we saw Helene and Milton later on in the year. We really had a quiet hurricane season, and then suddenly we have multiple major hurricanes right off our coast. So end of September, early October, we need to keep our eyes on the tropics. I really appreciate you guys watching this video. I am going to start putting out longer format videos every Sunday so I can really lay out what's going to happen over the next 7 days. Like I talked about here, taking a look at the tropics, taking a look at what could happen with our temperatures, precipitation, severe potential. Now, there's not a lot of severe potential right now, and there's not a lot going on in the tropics. The big news right now is all the cold air moving in and all the heat moving in. That's what I'm focusing on, but I will be posting a video like this every Sunday, and I do post shorts every single day as well on my TikTok and on my YouTube and on my Instagram. You can follow me, Connor's Climate Corner, on basically everything except for Snapchat, although I'll probably have a Snapchat as well soon. And if you also want to become a member on YouTube or subscriber on TikTok, it is just $2.99 a month. And then you get access to my Discord, where we are building an awesome weather community, and there's tons of daily and live updates posted in there every single day. That's also where you can chat with me off stream, and where I let everyone know when I'll be posting my videos and when I'll be hopping on my live stream. So again, I appreciate you watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.